You'd think that cruise ships are so big now and they have stabilizers that there's no way that you'd actually get seasick nowadays on a cruise. Unfortunately, that's just not true, and it does happen. But I'm going to tell you how you can prevent being seasick on a cruise, and then if you do get seasick, what you can do to deal with it. We're going to go over 10 tips on how to deal with seasickness on a cruise. Hi there, I'm Ilana from Life Well Cruised, and today I'm going to be going over 10 tips to help you to prevent seasickness on a cruise. Now, I've been working in the industry for over a decade, and I've been on over 20 cruises myself. I have the website and blog, Life Well Cruised, where I help thousands of readers every month get ready for their cruises with my cruise tips. Now, take a second, please, and just hit subscribe, as well as don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified for when the next cruise tip video comes out. Now, let's get into those seasickness prevention tips. One of the most common worries that new cruisers have is, will I be seasick on a cruise? Will my children be seasick on a cruise? And that's a very valid concern. So we're going to go through 10 ways to actually prevent this, to avoid this, and how to deal with it if it does happen to you. So the reality is that on a cruise ship, they are large. The likelihood of you getting seasick, at least for a prolonged amount of time, is really, really rare. It's unlikely to happen. However, if you are prone to motion sickness, you definitely want to take this seriously. Make sure that you bring some things to avoid it if you can. And I would say, even if you're not prone to motion sickness, just being prepared ahead of time is just always a great idea, because it can actually happen. So let's go through those tips. Tip number 1, cabin location. So before you even get on your cruise ship, you're going to be thinking about where your cabin is located. Ideally, you'll want to try to find a cabin that is located midship. That will just give you as much stability as is possible within the cabin itself. So if you can't get a midship location, then another location that would be kind of second best is aft, which just means the back of the ship. So anywhere between mid and aft is probably your best location. If you are in the forward, you might just be fine, but if there is more motion, that is where you'll most likely feel it. And we've had that ourselves, so I can guarantee you there definitely is a little more motion in the front than in the back or in the middle. If you can be even mid between that height and the lower part, that's also really good too. Try to avoid that top deck, that if there happens to be a windy evening or a lot of wind and a rough sea, sometimes the top also moves a little bit more. So really being mid is going to be the best tip that I can give you. Tip number 2. If you know that you have motion sickness, then you might want to think about something that's called the scopolamine patch, or it's the motion sickness patches that go behind your ear. So those are medicated, and you would want to probably talk to your pharmacist or doctor about that. But I can tell you that cruisers who use them do report that they work really, really well. So if you have already that you know you're prone to motion sickness, this is probably for you. Tip number 3. Something else that you can get and bring with you on a cruise are Seabands. Now, this product is pretty amazing. It'll just go on your wrists. Children can use it too. It's reusable, it's natural, and this is something that a lot of cruisers wear. Something that we like to do is actually sometimes have a Seaband for boat rides, because even if we may not be seasick on the ship, it can be really handy to have on the boat rides. I will link that product down below, because that's definitely something that you probably want to bring with you on your cruise. Tip number 4. So something else that some people use is acupuncture. So obviously this is something you'll need to think about before your cruise, but acupuncture seems to work really well for people that are prone to motion sickness or have vertigo. So do talk to your acupuncturist about that and your doctor and see if that is right for you. Tip number 5. Be prepared before you get on your cruise with having some medication to deal with seasickness should it happen on your cruise. So some of the different products that cruisers really like are either some Dramamine, some Bonine, some ginger gravel. Those are all products that people have said that they really liked. We actually, just on our last cruise, my husband used some Bonine and he found that that worked really well. Most of the time we don't get seasick on a cruise, but he happened to really feel the motion one evening on our last cruise. So he did take some Bonine and found that really, really helpful. Tip number 6. Now, if it happens that you do get seasick on the cruise and you start to feel a little bit of the motion, another little trick is to actually eat a green apple. So I know it sounds a little bit funny to even want to be eating anything, but that's a crew tip that we got a few years ago and it really does work. And you will see cruisers eating some green apples. The crew swears by it. So just slice up a little bit of green apple and maybe have that with a little bit of toast or some crackers or even on its own. And that can really help to settle your stomach. So what we usually do is we head over to the buffet and we pick a green apple or two, and we even sometimes leave that in our cabin just in case. Tip number 7. If you're already dealing with a little bit of seasickness on a cruise, a little bit of motion, then another thing that you'll want to do is head out to an open space on the cruise. So generally, confining yourself to your cabin, especially if it's during the day, isn't going to help you to feel any better, especially the cabin is usually small and you can kind of sometimes feel the motion a little more there than you can if you're at an open deck. So ideally, if the weather is nice, get outside, feel that ocean breeze, hang out at the pool deck, even find a place that's quiet then, and just maybe eat your green apple and try to just get that ocean breeze and stay at an open deck and try not to look straight at the waves because that'll help you too. Tip number 8, another product that you really would probably want to bring on your cruise, and this is amazing, is actually anything ginger. So we bring a little bit of ginger candies. I'll show you that, what we bring over here. You can get these at the health food store. You can get these online. So these are just like ginger candies. Sometimes we bring a little bit of candied ginger. Some cruise lines will actually have a little bit of candied ginger even on the table if it's a little bit rough. And that's definitely something that you can bring with you on your cruise, and that is really helpful if you get a little bit of motion sickness. Tip number 9, if you are dealing with a little bit of motion sickness, once you've taken your medications, once you've dealt with it the best way you can, maybe you've taken a little bit of Bonine, 1 Bonine or 2 Bonines, then what you'll want to do is keep yourself busy. So don't preoccupy yourself with not feeling well. Don't look at those waves, but maybe just preoccupy yourself with a lot of the great things there are to do on the ship and try to get that a little bit out of your head. That kind of really does help. Tip number 10. The most important thing that you can do to deal with seasickness on a cruise is actually to try to prevent it before it happens. So if you're starting to feel seasick, take a Bonine or a Dramamine. If you know you're prone to motion sickness, get those scopolamine patches or take acupuncture before you go on your cruise, or take a little bit of ginger as soon as you feel those symptoms. Don't wait for the symptoms to kick in because it'll really only be worse. And I can guarantee you that the best way you can deal with seasickness is to deal with it as soon as the symptoms start or even before. So I hope that this video has been helpful for you in getting ready for your cruise and hopefully preventing any seasickness on your cruise. Now, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And why don't you let me know as well what tips that you personally use for avoiding seasickness on a cruise. Just let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel. I'd love to connect with you further. So subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified when a new cruise tip video comes out. You can also find me on Facebook and on Instagram, where I'd love to connect with you further and, well, continue our conversation. Happy cruising.